This is a real story of those who lived this surreal experience. Horrible abduction. This experience happened to me. My name is Roberto. I'm 23 years old. 3 years ago, I lived in a quiet town, and I worked in a nearby town. About an hour and a half to get to work. Every day I returned only at night. Sometimes I stayed late at work. I was already used to this day-to-day routine. Once I had to stay up until 10 o'clock at night, because I had a lot of work to do and needed to work overtime. When I was returning home, the road was very deserted, as it was already a little late. It was a warm night and the sky was full of stars. In the course of the journey, after driving for a few minutes, I saw something different. It was a light that moved from one side to another in the sky. So, I was very amazed by that light, which suddenly began to approach. At the time, I didn't know what it could be, but it was very strange. There is a certain stretch of road I decided to park the car. I was very intrigued by the light that went ahead of me. As I got out of the car, I watched the bright light, which stopped in the air. Suddenly the light moves, near the trees that were near the side of the road. So I got really curious and went there. When I got closer, I saw that it was a kind of disc and it kept turning with the lights. Suddenly it lowered close to the ground, and 3 skinny beings with very strange skin descended, certainly not human. I was well hidden, and they were just standing there. So I thought it best to get back to the car as soon as possible. Fear started to take over me, more when I was sneaking out. I ended up stepping on a dry branch that made a noise, and those beings saw me, so I started to run. But when I looked back, the lights disappeared. I thought they were gone. When suddenly my body became paralyzed. I went into despair. I couldn't move. I just saw a very strong light above me. My body started to float. I couldn't believe what was happening. I was abducted into some sort of spaceship, completely paralyzed and floating towards the ship. I was led through a narrow corridor with the beings that accompanied me until we reached a brightly lit room. When one of the beings stood in front of me and said something I didn't understand, and there was a very strong smell, similar to solvent. He had a big head and huge eyes. I couldn't do anything at that moment. Then the being started touching my arm and I felt unbearable pain. I couldn't defend myself. Then they put me in a kind of capsule. When suddenly I passed out. When I came to my senses, I was still inside the capsule. Suddenly the beings inserted a metallic tube into my stomach. It felt like they were messing with my internal organs. I became desperate with that horrible experience that was happening to me at the time. But he was still paralyzed, and I fainted again. I don't know how to explain what those beings really were. But when I woke up again, I was close to the highway, very far from where I parked the car the first time. It was already daytime and I was feeling nauseous and very dizzy. So I stopped a car passing by on the highway and asked for help. I was taken to the hospital. Upon arrival, I was examined by a doctor. And to my surprise, there wasn't even a scratch on my body. When I managed to contact my family, I was really scared because they told me that I had been missing for 3 days and everyone was looking for me. So I explained to my family what happened to me, but they didn't really believe me. I even understand why it's really hard to believe this story. I finally managed to return home and continued my life normally. Until one night, I woke up at dawn to go to the bathroom and everyone was asleep. Upon returning to the room, I noticed something strange in the kitchen. The light turned on by itself. So, with a little fear, I decided to go there. That's when I came across that strange being again. And I was paralyzed once again. The being stood still looking at me for a few seconds. And suddenly I heard a very different voice inside my head. That said, "You belong to us, we will soon come back for you." And that being quickly disappeared. Today, I live with a lot of family in another city. I've been to a psychologist. I tried to find an explanation with ufologists who study these types of apparitions. But I managed to find no answer to this fact. Today, I'm very afraid of walking at night. I have a lot of insomnia, so I take medication to sleep. This was a real story that happened to me, and I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone.